The following public affairs presentation is produced exclusively for the Cox Channel. And now, The Verdict.
And welcome once again to The Verdict. I'm very pleased today to be with you and bring you greetings from Mick Cornett, who will not be with us for the next few weeks, but in his place, we're honored to have co-host Robert McCampbell. Robert's a law partner of mine, a former United States District Attorney for the Western District of Oklahoma, a frequent guest on The Verdict, but now going to co-host. Welcome, Robert. Glad to have you.
Well, thank you, Kent. I'm really excited to be here, and I've always enjoyed The Verdict because it's a chance to really find out what's really happening as opposed to just listening to a 15-second soundbite.
And the guest we got today is going to tell us that.
I think he is. Lance Cargill is a really interesting guy. He'll be the first speaker from an urban area we've had in Oklahoma in 40 years, and it'll be interesting to listen to him.
Well, we're looking forward to it. Glad you're here. You're watching The Verdict. We'll be right back with Speaker Designate Lance Cargill.
At Chesapeake Energy, here's a few of our favorite Hornets. Alexis likes reading. Sam enjoys history. Alec loves math. Chesapeake is proud to support both the Oklahoma City NBA Hornets and the Young Hornets at Horace Mann Elementary, where over 150 Chesapeake employees mentor to children each week. The students gain a lot from the experience, but not as much as we do. Chesapeake Energy, committed to building a better Oklahoma.
Hi, honey. You've got to check this out.
What? What are we listening to?
I had digital phone service installed today.
It sounds just like before.
I know, but it's going to save us a ton of money.
With Cox Digital Telephone, you'll save big every month. Keep your same phone number and get your favorite calling features. Just pay less.
That does sound good.
You should hear the upstairs phone.
I'm Chris Paul. And I'm Dave Lyall with some of our friends from the Boys and Girls Clubs in Oklahoma. Growing up is tough. Everyone needs a fun and safe place to learn and grow.
Boys and Girls Clubs offer programs that instill a sense of pride, purpose, and belonging. Club kids have grown up to become movie stars and, yes, even basketball legends.
We hope you'll join Cox, Oklahoma in supporting the Boys and Girls Club.
Get involved with your local club today because it truly is
a positive place for kids.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Myers with Robert McCampbell, and today we're honored to have the Honorable Lance Cargill, the Speaker Designate of the House of Representatives for the Oklahoma Legislature. Lance is a Republican, a native of Harrah, Oklahoma, did his undergraduate work at Oklahoma State University and his law work at the prestigious law school of Vanderbilt. He has practiced law in Harrah. He is an adjunct professor at Rose State University. He's been in the House of Representatives since 2000. This is his second or third appearance on The Verdict, but we're really pleased you're back wearing a new hat. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So first, congratulations
Thank you.
on being elected Speaker Designate. And I wish you could tell us a little bit about the process. At 34 years old, you'll be the youngest Speaker in Oklahoma history, the youngest Speaker most probably of all the states across the United States. Can you tell us a little bit about how it is you come to that position at this early age and what it feels like to be in this position?
Well, it's an enormous honor, first of all, to be chosen by my colleagues in that Republican House caucus to be the next leader. How you get there? Well, a lot of hard work, but also by casting a vision of hope, growth, and opportunity for this state. And you mentioned my age. It's interesting, if you look at a number of our political leaders in Oklahoma over the last 20, 30 years, you have a real record of Oklahomans embracing younger leaders, whether that's guys like David Boren or Don Nichols, or even our current governor, frankly, Brad Henry. And I think casting a vision of hope, of freshness and new ideas for our state as we enter the 21st century, I think is a message that has resonated well with the people across the state.
Well, in a short period of time, you've obviously engendered a lot of confidence in your comrades or your colleagues in the House. How does one do it? You've just been there since 2000. How does one do it so quickly and in such a way that allows them to vote for you as House Speaker?
Well, as I say, a lot of hard work, first of all, but we also have entered a new dynamic, frankly, in terms of public service in the state and the legislature due to term limits. You're going to see an environment now where folks are moving up a lot faster because you only have 12 years to serve. Our current speaker, of course, is term limited out, and that creates the vacancy. And you have a new caucus and a new generation of leadership, frankly, emerging at the state capitol, one that is in many respects younger. And I think there are certainly some benefits to that. Now, I think diversity is important, and our caucus certainly reflects that. We have folks from many different stages in our life. But on the whole, you do see a bit of a younger legislature, and it opens up some opportunities for younger people to get involved, perhaps where they haven't before.
You changed positions last session,
right?
And then ascended to the Speaker Designate position.
Right.
Obviously, the Republican Party is in control of the House.
Right.
I suppose that's something that you would expect to continue.
Indeed. The first Republican majority in state in the last 80 years, we were able to win that in 2004. And I think regardless of whatever political party you are, I think there is a lot of agreement that one group of people in charge of an institution for 80 years can create some challenges. The phrase that I like to use is that every garden needs a good weeding every 80 years or so. And I think what had happened in the House...
Sounds like my garden,
indeed,
by the way.
yes. But the legislature in particular is that long-time domination by one group of people chokes out a lot of good ideas and initiatives. And the fresh leadership, I think, presented a new opportunity for a number of initiatives to get a hearing, and they were embraced by the legislature as a whole and signed into law by the governor.
Let's talk about some of those initiatives. Coming out of this last session, what do you look back on as some of the real accomplishments from the House?
3 or 4 things that I'm really proud of that we were able to accomplish. First of all, you had the largest state income tax cuts in our state history, not once but twice, 2 years ago and again this year. I think this income tax on the whole is a tax that punishes work, savings, and investment. We need to be incentivizing those types of things as a state, and lowering our state income tax is key to that. A number of states across the country, including our biggest economic competitor just to our south, Texas, doesn't have a state income tax at all. 2 years ago, when we took the majority, we had one of the highest income taxes across the country. So that is a great accomplishment. Historic investment in education coupled with historic reform. I think some on the political left, our political opponents, may have wanted to suggest that a Republican majority might mean a cutting back on public education, that leadership somehow would negatively impact public education. Quite the opposite has been true. In fact, for 2 years in a row, we have passed the largest teacher pay increases on a percentage basis in the entire country. Let me say that again in case you missed it. It was a Republican majority that passed the largest teacher pay increases on a percentage basis in the country 2 years in a row. I'm very proud of that investment because I think education is enormously important to creating the type of Oklahoma that we want to compete in a knowledge-based 21st century economy. But what we've also begun to implement, Robert and Kent, is not just more money into the status quo education system. We've coupled that investment with what I think are some historic reforms, higher standards, accountability with our teachers and our students. And I think it's that combination of both investment and reform that will create a 21st century public education system that our students really need. Two other notes of accomplishment. The infrastructure and roads. We have historically starved our roads and public transportation infrastructure for investment in this state. In the next 5 years, we have a plan to double the amount of money going into roads and bridges in this state. I think that's key. And then finally, on pro-family matters, particularly on the abortion issue, I think we live in a decidedly pro-life state. Many folks agree with reasonable measures that we passed this year, such as a parental notification bill, ensuring that women are fully informed of their health care decisions with regard to terminations of pregnancies and abortions. And we were able to pass that historic legislation this year as well.
You were able to do that with a democratically controlled Senate. I presume there was some bipartisanship involved this last session.
Right. There was a natural give and take, and we found a willing partner in the governor on many initiatives, and we appreciated that. Now, to be sure, I think there's a lot more that can be done. I'm very optimistic and hopeful that my Republican colleagues in the Senate will take control of that body. By the way, that would be the very first Republican majority ever in our state Senate. Once again, getting to this notion that the fresh leadership and new ideas, I think, can be good for the state. But we were able to accomplish some things. I would like to go a lot further in the future.
Let me jump in here and get us to a break. We're visiting with Lance Carter, Speaker Designate of the Oklahoma House of Representatives, with Robert McCampbell and Kent Myers. You're watching The Verdict.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
That land next door was a mess. Take more than a lawnmower to revive that land. I heard the oil and natural gas people was cleaning up old oil sites, and it wouldn't cost us a plug nickel. Oh yes, sir, it was quite a revival. The whole church showed up. Want to make a playground for the kids. It sure is a blessing.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Oh, hi. I know you guys said I'd save with Cox Digital Telephone. Well, my bill came and... Could this be right?
You may be surprised how much you save with Cox Digital Telephone. That's why over 1.5 million people have switched.
So this really is a total? Lovely. Because I think I found a good use for the savings.
With Cox, there's no waiting for the other shoe to drop. The only surprise is there's no surprise at all.
Not sure where you're headed? NATS can help you find your way. It's the National Athletic Testing System. We call it NATS. You'll call it your launching pad to success. NATS will give you a standardized evaluation that will help you measure your performance and give that information to college coaches so they can accurately evaluate your potential. NATS also helps with academic support. Join with the Oklahoma High School Football Coaches Association and head for success at www.nats.us.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Myers, Robert McCampbell, visiting with Lance Carter, the Speaker Designate of the Oklahoma House of Representatives. Lance, we talked in the last segment about what happened last session. Let's talk about what you see as the major hurdles that the House and perhaps the Senate face in this next session.
Sure, it's a great question. You'll always have debates and contention over the fundamental issues like taxation, what we're going to do in terms of how the income tax and our tax mix looks like in this state. You'll have battles over education spending, how the delivery of education services would be best be structured in the state. But there are 2 or 3 issues that I do think are on the horizon that folks sometimes maybe aren't keyed into. But one major issue that our state's going to be facing soon is the whole issue of water. Water resources are becoming much more important, not only for Oklahoma, but surrounding states. And efforts to commercially use and sell that water, whether it is out of state, within the state, I think are going to become more and more important over time. You have a situation, of course, in eastern Oklahoma where you have an abundance of water, but the western side of the state, particularly in the drought type conditions that we're experiencing now, water is becoming much more important to those communities. Suburban areas, even on the western side of Oklahoma City, communities like Yukon have some significant water needs, and those are really going to have to be addressed in some fashion. With the emergence of a Republican majority in the Senate, I think you'll also see a new commitment to the idea of tort reform. It's an issue that we have addressed many times over on the House side and have found some difficulty over in the Senate getting that passed. I think if you have a Republican majority, you will have a collection of leaders over there who are much more open to the concept of
Let me jump in.
tort reform.
On tort reform, what's left? We've had some tort reform. Well, what are you looking for as the next step?
Well, I think there has to be certainly an examination of attorney fee issues, how we're compensating folks, particularly in contingency fee cases. Are there ways in which we can better empower judges and our court system to more efficiently and effectively move cases out at an earlier period of time?
Let me ask you, let me jump in,
yeah.
and excuse me for doing so.
Sure.
On the attorney's fee issue, it seems to me there has to be a balance struck between making sure the fee is not exorbitant or unreasonable on the one hand,
right,
and on the other hand, making sure that it's not so low or so paltry that no lawyer will take the case, and therefore the injured worker may not have access to the court because they can't afford to, nobody will represent them. They can't do it economically. How do you balance those things?
Well, they're very difficult, and I guess that's what the question really was about. What are the difficult challenges, I think, of the next session? I think many people of good faith, both on the right and the left, Democrat and Republican, recognize the very issues that you talk about, Kent. We absolutely must have a court system that is open and available to folks who have been injured, who require and are in need of justice. And we want a bar, a legal system, a group of attorneys who are able to economically and efficiently take care of those cases. But by the same token, we must ensure that we have a fair and efficient system that provides access not only to the litigants on the plaintiff's side, but our business and industry who often find themselves hauled before those courts. A couple of initiatives that I'm interested in particularly, is especially the creation of a business court or more specialized courts, particularly in our largest jurisdictions where we have judges and court personnel who are highly trained and specialized in moving these really large, complex cases in a fair and efficient manner for our litigants.
As a matter of fact, you've been on the verdict and talked about that.
That's right.
Has there been progress on that?
Well,
legislatively?
2 or 3 years ago, we authorized the Supreme Court to begin examining the notion of creating these courts, and just had a meeting earlier this year, actually, with some court personnel, and that will be an area of emphasis for me, looking at some other states that have developed these courts of specialized jurisdiction, and perhaps implementing the best pieces of those here in Oklahoma.
So we're heading into campaign season now, and I'd be really interested in your views. What do you think is going to happen on the House of Representatives and also the Senate side as the elections unfold?
Well, I feel very confident that our message of hope and growth and opportunity for Oklahoma, a record that we have demonstrated in terms of taxation, education, transportation, traditional values, will resonate very well with the people of this state. So I'm very confident that we will retain our majority. Right now we're at 57 members. We have 101 in our entire body. Feel very confident that we will maintain our majority we're going to work very hard to do that. A couple of key races that I see across the state, we have open seats in places like Lawton, Ada, and Duncan, seats that were traditionally held by Democrats, but we have exceptional candidates who will be working very hard to win those seats. On the flip side of that, we have some term-limited members in places like Del City, Sapulpa, Bristow, where the Democrats I know are going to make every effort to pick those seats up. But I think on the whole, I feel very confident that we will be able to, at the end of the day, retain our majority in the House. Over on the Senate side, you have an exceptionally important election cycle.
Let's talk numbers a second.
Yeah.
How close is it in the Senate right now?
Republicans are 1 seat away. I believe they're at 23. There are 48 Senate seats. And so Republicans are 1 seat away there, and they're going to be making a very strong push to take the majority for the first time ever in our state's history. They won an exceptionally important special election race down in Altus a couple of months ago that we think is a real bellwether, a harbinger of the type of change and results that we'll see in the broader general elections this fall, which should be very favorable to Republicans, we think.
Well, let's carry that on one step further just for a second. How important this year is the lieutenant governor's race, particularly in comparison to how it used to be?
Most important lieutenant governor's race in our state history, period. Because of the narrow margin in the Senate, you certainly could see a scenario by which the parties would be evenly split in the Senate. If Republicans pick only 1 seat up in the general election, that would be a 24-24 Republican-Democrat split. Under that scenario, the lieutenant governor, as the constitutional president of the Senate, becomes the tie-breaking vote. And so, depending on whether you have a Republican or Democrat emerge in that lieutenant governor's race, that could determine the partisan control of our state Senate.
We just have a little bit of time remaining. Robert, do you want to finish this up?
Well, I do. I'd really be interested. If you could just give us the inside look from your point of view in this next session, where do you see the real opportunities, policy-wise, to advance our state?
Continuing to attack the income tax, to move to a system of taxation in this state that does not punish work, savings, and investment as the income tax does, ratcheting that down over time, looking more towards a consumption tax, creating a low tax, low regulation environment in which entrepreneurs and businesses can flourish in the state, number one. Number two, creating the educational infrastructure in the state to create the intellectual capital that we need to build a 21st century economy in Oklahoma that can compete in this knowledge-based economy that we're going to have in coming years. Standing firm for values, strongly for our values, but also recognizing that those values must be relevant and applied for a modern day. And you're gonna have an open-minded majority in the House of Representatives that applies those traditional values in a modern setting. And then also transportation and infrastructure. We're going to continue to build that, not only in terms of roads and bridges, but in terms of technology, making sure that every kid in this state, whether they live in Edmond or Idabel, Oklahoma, have great opportunities for success in the coming years.
Lance, thank you so much for joining us. Robert and I really do appreciate it. You're watching The Verdict. You've been listening to Lance Carter, the Speaker Designate of the House of Representatives. We'll be right back.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Just keep it.
Thank you. Dr. Kessler? What's up with the pizzas?
Well, I just got my first satellite bill, and those extra fees were a bit of a shocker. So I had to take a second job.
Hey, this was supposed to be pepperoni, dillweed.
Hey, it's Dr. Dillweed to you.
Whatever.
Kids. It's cool. I'm a people person.
Don't live in satellite denial. Get all your entertainment without the hidden charges from Cox, your friend in the digital age.
Here's the pitch. Line drive on there. The Cardinals won the pennant. The Cardinals win. That's a winner. A World Series winner for the Cardinals. Oh, an unbelievable catch. Swing and a miss. Get up, baby. Get up, get up, get up, get up. Home run.
Your slice of Cardinals heaven can be found on the Cox channel all season long.
Welcome back. Kent Myers with Robert McCampbell. Had a good show, Robert, with Lance Cargill.
I thought he was really interesting. You know, like any political leader, he's really focused on what he's going to get done next term. But it was interesting to hear him talk about the longer term issues, water rights, education, business courts, things that will affect Oklahoma 10 and 20 years from now. And I've got to say, I'm excited about next week.
And what are we doing next week?
Next week, Kevin Ward, he's the Secretary for Public Safety for the state of Oklahoma. And in that capacity, he's in charge of the Highway Patrol, but he does lots of other things in the public safety area, and he's a really interesting guy.
Well, thanks so much for joining me today, and thanks for coming back next week and the week after.
Absolutely.
For our visitors, I'd like, our viewers, I'd like to encourage you to get on the Verdict website. Let us know what you'd like to see. We do pay attention to the thoughts that you give us. You can reach us at www.theverdict.tv. Let us know what you'd like to see, and we'll give it to you. For Robert McCampbell, I'm Kent Myers. Thanks for watching The Verdict. We will see you next week.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.